Welcome to the Brewing Innovation with Red Hat and Platform Modernization Coffee Talk. To get started, I'm thrilled to introduce Michael Downs, Evolving Solutions Chief Technology Officer.
So I'm very pleased to be joined today by Matt Davis and Matthew Miller from Red Hat to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is platform modernization. We're definitely in a unique point in the history of the IT landscape, and I'm really looking forward to digging this more deeply with Matt and Matthew. So before we go any farther, I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves. Maybe Mr. Matt Davis, if you could start there, and maybe let us know what drew you to Red Hat and maybe why open source is important to you.
Yeah, those are good questions. So yeah, Matt Davis, I joined Red Hat about 20 years ago through frontline support, and I'm currently serving as the ecosystem specialist for for Evolving. And so what drew me to Red Hat? So I cut my teeth on Red Hat Linux 4.2, I think. In fact, it's sitting behind me on my shelf. Outside of my wedding ring, that was the most impactful item in my life, right? That's what kind of drew me into this world of like free Unix and like doing like compiling my own stuff, compiling my own kernel, and like, running my own email server, running my own web server. It was very kind of like, I don't know, exciting at the time. And really what it kind of like helped me understand was the value of open source. And what I've kind of, at the time, the value of open source to me was I can do things myself, right? It was like the world's my oyster. I can download a browser, I can download email server, I can download an operating system. And that was it. That was kind of cool. But, as I've kind of like learned the intricacies of IT and like the industry and whatever, like the value of open source has kind of changed. And it really, for me, it's more about freedom and flexibility and accountability. In fact, some of the key pillars of Red Hat itself. The fact that, some of our, our products are open source, it keeps us honest, right, to the customer to make sure that we're doing the right thing for the customer. People can always fork our code and kind of do whatever. And so we have to renew that trust, renew that value year after year with our subscription. And, we have to iterate. We have to make sure that we're providing value time and time again. And like that, the fact that our code is open and free, it keeps us honest to the value, constantly providing value to our customers. So
Awesome.
Thank you.
It's Matt. Also joining us today is Matthew Miller with Red Hat. Matthew, if you could introduce yourself and maybe give us a little bit of your background, plus, same question, what drew you to Red Hat and why is open source important to you?
Yeah, no, thank you, Michael. As Michael said, my name is Matthew Miller. I'm a chief architect at Red Hat. I'm in our field CTO organization. A colleague of mine who I've actually worked with on and off for about 20 years actually brought me to Red Hat, and it had a rather unique appeal. There was the draw of like enterprise Kubernetes was just being introduced. I was there at the forefront of that cloud native revolution when I came first to Red Hat, as customers are making that transition to go through and do that pivot to the mechanics of a hybrid-based solutions. But even simpler than that, it's the feel and the energy. Like Red Hat has a heavy focus on meritocracy, and we have a non-traditional structured corporation. It has startup energy, but like an established core. So like that really brought me in because that was where I really came from, was like that small energy, kind of companies that I've worked through.
Awesome. So it sounds like a couple of different journeys, but right at the core of what it means to be open source. And you talking about Red Hat 4.5, you said 4.1 in the background there, Matt. I still remember picking up a Red Hat 3.5 CD back in the 90s and going and trying to figure out how to make it work on my PC. So yeah, there's some, it's an amazing progression from that sort of early days where you had to figure out how to get a window to even pop up on your screen. I think that took me most of the time that I had. I was trying to figure out the video driver I had to much more complex enterprise enterprise forward, more easy to consume platform that Red Hat is now. So yeah, big journey, very fun. So I want to talk about to you both about a couple of things today. One is platform modernization, and we can't probably have a conversation about technology without talking about AI. So I'd want to maybe come back to the AI topic as we get further along. But I think one of the things that I'm constantly being asked by clients, and our clients are asking our technical team and our sellers, is what should I do about my hypervisor? So I don't think it's a secret to anybody that there's been some major shifts in the hypervisor landscape in terms of ownership and cost. And so it's got people looking around and considering what their alternatives might be. Frankly, there are a number of options, obviously, but one of the most interesting, I think, honestly, the most compelling option is what Red Hat brings to the table in this space. So maybe I'll start with you, Matthew, and can you share with us a little bit about how Red Hat's addressing this challenge in the need to look at the hypervisor space differently, to look at virtualization differently inside of an enterprise?
Yeah, so Red Hat has a rather established provenance when it comes to virtualization. We've been doing it for about 2006, 2007 timeframe, providing like an L1 hypervisor within the Linux kernel itself. We've had strong offerings around doing virtualization directly within our baseline flagship operating system and an OpenStack and a previous product that we call Red Hat Virtualization. But really what the customers are looking for us today, and which makes our newest offering that much more compelling, is this concept of open source and open standards. The fundamentals of the kernel virtual machine are open source. We're bringing it to a unified platform, which networking and storage are all based on open source standards and philosophies. And what customers are asking us is they don't want to take a journey from one platform to another to find themselves in the exact same place in another proprietary solution in another year or so. Because there's a lot that has to happen in order to migrate an environment, and that would just be devastating to future-proofing what your budget specifically could be. So we offer that mechanics of, like, as Matt said, digital sovereignty, because we're based on open source and there is no lock-in that comes within the mechanics of our platform.
So that's a great segue. So one of the things that you talked about is being able to make a transition to something from a proprietary approach to something more open that would give you more options. But you're absolutely correct, that migration path is challenging. What are some of the things that you are seeing challenge organizations the most as they think about moving from maybe a traditional virtualization environment into more of a Kubernetes-driven OpenShift virtualization kind of environment?
So I look at the journey as, if everybody's recently gone through this mechanic of like moving from your traditional cable networks to streaming-based services, it's not quite the same, but it provides a much more compelling, more open approach to getting exactly what you want.
Sure.
If you go into streaming services with the idea that it works like your cable network, you compare it to things that don't really take advantage of the things that you want. So we look at it as a transformation of skills, a transformation of how you do things operationally and organizationally. It's bringing together your developers, your DevSecOps teams, your operations teams into a paradigm where they work together. And this lowers the barrier to take on and explore things like AI, because you don't have these segmentations of skill sets that you have to be constantly crossing the barriers for. So you're going through and like working together within a common base control plane to be able to deliver those parts. This is operationally like what we're looking to do, and we're doing it at rather huge scales today, with some customers moving as many as 350 virtual machines a night, or during the course of a day, with some, like we've got one who talked at our summit, a large airline that was doing it all at night, moving like 150 a night. So it's definitely one where this concept of like looking at it as a different journey that's going to provide a different outcome, that's going to give you what you're looking for and what Red Hat's known for, which is that stability, trust, and security. Those are the fundamentals of what we do.
Awesome. So as you think about making this transition, one of the things that, Evolving Solutions is always focused on with our clients is availability, reliability, and security. You touched on those three things there. But I also think that's part of what holds people where they are, particularly when they've built processes and procedures around their existing platform and we're asking them to make a transition. So Matt, as you worked with some clients, what are the kinds of things that you've seen them do to soften that transition, to maybe make that a little bit easier to make happen?
Yeah, so ask that question again. Sorry.
Sure. If you're making the transition from a traditional platform to sort of a Kubernetes-based virtualization platform, which is really what OpenShift virtualization is, you've got to make some transitions in how you support the environment, sort of in terms of the operational every day. Matthew touched on that just a moment ago. What are some of the things that you've seen clients pick up as tools to be able to make that transition a little bit easier?
Yeah, so we have some tools baked into the product that we have Virtual Migration Assistant.
Yeah.
And so that is a almost point and click easy button that makes it super simple to do migrations from proprietary platforms to our platforms, or other platforms to our platforms. I mean, that's the tool that you can even wrap into Ansible automation platform and
Great.
put some other checks and balances in place to ensure like storage is in place, network is correct, executive sign off. You can even put that in place as you need to, and then you can then do those 200 plus type migrations at a time. Yeah, so that's baked into the product, and has really again made it from like kind of like scary, like how do I get this data from one place to the other, to really easy and smooth.
And to add to that, while we're, OpenShift is based heavily on the mechanics of Kubernetes, we provide a rather rich UI experience. We provide an API and command line experience that feels really comfortable to virtual machine administrators. And we actually, baked into the product, provide something that we call our OpenShift Lightspeed, which utilizes generative AI to be able to help somebody go through and ask how I did this in my previous role, and it'll go through and provide you how to do it within OpenShift virtualization. So it's going through and crossing the skills gap to be able to make everybody be able to understand that something like a vMotion is a live migration. So going through and having those accelerators that are built into the platform make it much more than just like Kubernetes, because it creates an enterprise class experience that most people will actually have come to like and be able to utilize at large scales.
No, I think that's why I am the most excited about Red Hat virtualization is the logical place to start to move some of these workloads. Is there is an ease of experience that looks somewhat similar. It's still a learning curve, so let's not kid ourselves. You've got to do things differently. But the capabilities that Red Hat has built into the tool to help make adoption simpler definitely makes it an easier journey for most companies. I want to come back to automation in a minute, but first let me ask you, what kind of workloads do clients start with usually? And sort of what are the easiest workloads to take from maybe a traditional hypervisor environment, proprietary hypervisor environment, into a Red Hat OpenShift environment?
So to help customers actually do this, we actually have a utility on top of our console. We call it Elevate VMware to OpenShift migrations. It basically takes RV tools based output, goes through and helps you break down your workloads to be able to see what are those easy workloads to be able to specifically move, and basically ranks out like those capabilities so that you can send them through our migration toolkit for virtualization. So when somebody's looking to go through and do these transitions, they can like look at their current environment, they can understand specifically what's in there, they can understand these things have been end of lifed for a very long time, and get an idea if there's like specialized hardware that may be required on the underside that they may need to go through and do considerations for. So that tooling is available just within our main console.redhat.com/OpenShift to be able to do that, to help them with those specific journey sets. But where I usually tell a customer to go through and start is, go in and actually, virtual machine estates are constantly growing. So you can always start with catching all new workloads as you look at going through and migrating the other workloads.
So are you seeing that as a fairly common pattern? Because one of the things I know can be a challenge for clients is I've got a new workload. I want to make 100% sure that it goes in well, because I've got a lot of eyes on a new workload. So it feels like there might be an additional piece of risk to say, I'm going to put it in a new virtualization platform. How are you sort of helping?
So we're seeing this as a really common place to go through and start. And with all of those eyes become all of that attention that the customers need to be able to go through and do as they make these transitions. Because it is an evolution of the skill sets that have to specifically go on the underside. And as they go through the mechanics of traditional launch versus soft launch, we have, as I said, we have customers that right now are just migrating, fully what they're currently doing. But when they're going through and bringing up the environment for the first time, it's an easy way to go through and get some hands-on capability as you start the process, especially if you're doing the traditional development-based cycle to bring on new workloads.
Awesome. Out of curiosity, are you seeing, maybe say it differently, are you seeing people choose to make a location change or a hybrid, moving from on-premise to in the cloud or on cloud to on-premise as part of this? Or are they sort of making that transition first, going from a VMware or some other to an OpenShift virtualization and then potentially moving location? Or are you kind of starting to see those two things integrate?
It's a mix. We've got some customers that'll actually go through and utilize their DR site as their primary, as they'll basically cut their DR into the new location area. So they'll actually perform replications over to the DR facility, just as they're creating this new environment to be able to go through and stand up. Coming into cloud, people are looking at their workloads more, but I would say that modernization efforts are, we get the conversations that I have a modernization path, but I have an immediate need now to be able to go through and move to a new solution. So we focus heavily on getting the customer into the new environment so that they can focus on transformation as a next step, because that's the more common use case. But in the cloud, we're doing a lot of virtualization that most people, it's one of those parts that customers are coming to us to be able to look at. They've over-provisioned their cloud estate significantly, and they're pulling things like AMIs into a virtualized workload to basically get back that 4-to-1 capabilities, so that they're better taking advantage of the hardware they have within there to right size their environments.
I think that's a very important pattern too. Is one of the other benefits that you get through this process is you're evaluating your environment in a way that's more detailed than you have in the past, because you're making a change, but you also get the opportunity to not just get like-for-like capability, and more importantly, in my head, a future-ready kind of platform. You also get this, to your point, Matthew, this opportunity to look at how your spend is happening across both public cloud as well as potentially your on-premise estate, and try to be able to make some good choices there. So I want to go back to automation for just a minute. So you called out rightfully the well-developed user interface, the GUI that people can use, that makes them feel like they're not making too big of a transition from what they've previously done to what they're done now. But if you're doing 150 virtual machines migrating a night, you're probably not going to the console and doing a bunch of moves for 150 virtual machines. Can you maybe talk a little bit more about how, I would also call out that automation is a key piece of platform transformation regardless. That's something you have to do in order to be able to get into a newer environment, is adopt that kind of automation. So maybe talk a little bit more about how that becomes part of a migration process, but also part of a day 2 ritual when it comes to an OpenShift environment.
So Matt, you want to speak to the automation factories, or should I?
Go for it.
So there's 2 parts that we're working with people on, is this mechanic of creating the automation factory. So we provide a tooling called the Migration Toolkit for Virtualization. It goes through and helps with the transformation of like being able to create that warm cutover to be able to bring one environment to another. But normally customers are limited by the mechanics of bandwidth unless they have the capability within their hardware to actually at the storage level to go through and utilize the storage-based replication capabilities. So they're going across their entirety of their estate and they want multiples of environments going through and migrating at one time. So what we've done is we have all of the modules within our Ansible automation platform so that you can basically set up an automation factory that works best within your environment so that you can perform the trigger, move the workload, do the testing, do the validation, and then you can tailor this to like what you're looking to specifically to deliver. And the goal is that as you create the mechanics of these playbooks, that the delivery part and the person doing it is just pushing a button, validating that things are clean within the monitoring set and going to the next virtual machine. So it really is to create this factory-based approach and to help customers who look at this as like a much larger learning curve. We actually go through and we have a virtual, what we call our migration assessments that help customers see what these factories specifically can look like and help them actually with services engagement set up the factory so that they can man them after the fact if they're looking to do something like that.
Okay.
And what I find interesting and useful is this can also kind of like piggyback or spearhead some more automation practices throughout the organization, right? A lot of times people are looking for those use cases, those key like wins and like hopefully an aha moment of, okay, so this is the art of the possible within this product. And so then they can look at it for other technologies and other places that it might land. And, we're seeing customers see that as well.
Yeah, and this is something that we oftentimes have conversations with clients. You talk to a client, they say, yeah, we're automated. And that means that I've got a bunch of bash scripts, I've got a bunch of PowerShell, I've got a little bit of Puppet, I've got some Ansible someplace, I've got some Terraform, I've got all these things that are going on in their environment. And so they have automated in silos, but they're missing the value of sort of having a comprehensive strategy, a platform strategy that allows you to educate your teams, but also to pull your capabilities together, because we haven't talked about this too much yet, but the other thing that happens is becomes a stronger segmentation, or you start to blur the lines more completely as you move into Kubernetes between who's your storage, who's your network, who's your compute. These teams that existed before to run these individual silos have to come together in a way that they haven't historically done in order to be successful in this environment. And so that brings me to a little bit of a day two question. One is sort of what are people doing around that, right? Are you seeing people shift organizational approaches or adopting particular methodologies to make that work? And one of my architects has done a really great job of bringing up the idea of I have to think about troubleshooting differently in day two than in this OpenShift environment than I did in a VM environment. The things that I used to think about in terms of virtual networks have a different kind of construct now that I need to think about as I'm troubleshooting the details of that. So just maybe a little bit of perspective from the two of you on how people are looking at running that day two environment and maybe some changes that you're seeing with either teams or approach or whatever else that happens.
Yeah, so and that kind of gets to the heart of the value of OpenShift versus some of the other options that customers might be faced with. And that is, what does year 2, year 3, year 5, maybe even year 10 look like for your environment? And, are they looking for just a straight replacement, a new virtual platform, or are they looking for something that is more forward-facing, future-looking? And that's where we're seeing Kubernetes taking, being the platform of, virtualization. It was a platform of containerization. Now it's also a platform of virtualization, a platform for AI. We don't know what the next iteration will be. It's turning into that platform of future-looking technology. And so what we're finding is, finding those individuals that are kind of like in those kind of frames of mind of like, what's that next iteration of the data center look like? Hybrid cloud is easy, right? Hybrid cloud is native to our technology. This is, we've got that space, but what are they trying to do after that? And that's been helpful.
And if you look at like what we're going through and doing from a strategy perspective as we're helping customers adopt OpenShift virtualization, we are not asking the customer to forego what they've actually deployed within their current VM estate to transition. So we are not asking them to go through and redirect all their traffic through the baseline Kubernetes backbone. We're actually going through and directly plumbing the VMs in place, even the MAC addresses, so that we can do the warm cutover. So like when you go through and interact with the network, the network feel is going to be relatively familiar to what a traditional environment has been that you're working within. And then when it comes to the storage mechanics, we're giving the customers what they've been asking for, which is actually being able to take advantage of what's provided within their storage array. The one thing that Kubernetes does is it actually provides something called the container storage interface, so that you can directly go through and create a snapshot. That snapshot's within the array. So instead of having to go through and create this above layer that's utilizing a heavy amount of CPU, it's actually transitioning it through to the array so that you're getting the capabilities that you're specifically paying for, and then removing the mechanics of that proprietary middle layer that would sit in between.
Excellent. So lots of good reasons to consider the OpenShift virtualization platform as you think about updating and migrating. And you just made a really great point, which is, sort of redirecting or moving. What are some workloads you're seeing that are maybe more challenging to move, or maybe might stay in place versus migration? What are the workloads that are sort of maybe not as great of a candidate for migration from a traditional VM environment into OpenShift?
So where we specifically hit contention is, there's this mechanic of what's called certified specific workloads that are certified for a baseline platform. So it is a workload that is certified for the previous hypervisor, and we're still working on those certifications.
Okay.
So it isn't that we can't migrate over the environment. We just have it creates a different paradigm if a customer were to go through and migrate, because certification, especially for some stricter workloads like SAP, require a mechanic of a very specific layout and setup. So those types of things aren't a limitation of the platform. They're where we're going through it and working with all of those providers to be able to get onto the certification list, and how we're road mapping as many as we can. But like we're going through and bringing more ISV into our ecosystem almost on a daily basis. A year ago, we didn't have VDI partners, and now we do. So like we're going through this part of certifying as many workloads as we can on top of the platform. We try to identify those within our assessments so that you can go through and see them up front. So it's less a mechanic of going through and what can't run on the system. It's more of like what pieces of legacy are out there that may require some modernization to be able to go through and run on the platform, just small tweaks and transformations, or something that you have to deal with a certification part, which may need a conversation with your end vendor.
Yeah. So I want to push you on that just a little bit, but the certification completely makes sense. That's absolutely the hurdle we've seen with. There have been alternatives to the largest virtualization platform for a long time that have oftentimes come back to what platform am I certified on. Are you seeing any meaningful technical hurdles, or is it really an issue of support and certification? Support
and certification we're seeing,
great.
Potentially right now.
Yeah, and there's a level of training that kind of goes along with that. Like we have a guide that is kind of like a Rosetta Stone of like what's on OpenShift versus the other platform, like the terminologies, the things that maybe don't exactly exist because we implement it differently on our platform.
Yeah.
And I can put a link to that. I don't know if it's here or later.
Yeah, that'd be great. If you want to pop that in the chat, then the people who are here can get it. For watching the recording, it'll be available too. So yeah, I love that Rosetta Stone. That's a perfect analogy. I love it.
And we're going through and we're doing some rather large estate migrations right now. We have one financial systems integrator partner that's gone through and showcased a 3-year savings of about 48.3 million, and they have a virtualization cost reduction of about 59%. So like these types of things, as we help customers showcase the ROI that they're getting, and aligning that to the mechanic of, you know, providing as transparent of a roadmap as we can on like where we're specifically going when it comes to those mechanics of those certifications, help customers go through it, understand where they are and where they need to be.
Absolutely. And I mean, this is one of the things I mentioned earlier that Red Hat is most excited about as a transformation platform for VMs, largely because Red Hat as a company has taken so much effort to, you're such a technical company. I don't think I've ever been to anybody's event before. I went to Summit this last spring, Red Hat Summit, and on the keynote on day 2, there was an on-screen demo. I don't know that I've ever been to some place where there was actually a demo on screen during the keynote. So it's fantastic. You think about these things and then you figure out how to make them consumable, and it's a really great fit. So with that in mind, one of the biggest technology challenges that everybody's facing right now is what do I do with artificial intelligence? And one of the fundamental things we've continued to come back to with our clients is if you're going to do something internally with AI versus going out and using a chat GPT or an Anthropic or the other platforms, if you're going to do something internally, you need to have a Kubernetes platform. That's sort of one of the foundational pieces. The software doesn't work very well without a Kubernetes platform. So since we're talking about OpenShift, can you maybe talk a little bit about sort of Kubernetes adoption as it relates to AI workloads and what you're seeing with clients, whether it's on-premise or in the cloud, around AI and OpenShift?
Yeah, so you hit the nail on the head. Our customers are living 2 worlds right now. They're trying to go through and keep their current operations going. They're trying to maintain their current capabilities and have roadmaps around the applications that they're building, and they're trying to understand the potential within AI. If I was to generalize and simplify what Red Hat's attempting to go through and do, we are trying to provide life cycles for AI so that you can bring your workloads into production. And we're attempting to go through and bring the lowest inferencing cost in software to the customer, because it's not just straight tokens anymore. You have this whole concept of intermediary tokens with decision-making components. So this can get super expensive, and everybody's going to be playing with the SOTA models out there. But like going through and bringing them into production is kind of, it's one of those parts where it's something that's completely evolving rapidly. And when it comes to enterprise-based applications, what people want is stability and repeatability, and more function and control. So what we're doing is we're helping customers adopt patterns of going through and adopting AI that link to what they're currently doing today in a methodology that goes through and feels familiar. And Kubernetes is just one aspect. It's the serverless aspect for the data scientists. It's being able to have access to the resources, like things like GPU as a service. So we're not looking to go through and bring scary to AI within the mechanics of Kubernetes. What we're trying to do is, unlike virtual machines, which are relatively a commodity, these AI accelerators, be it GPU, NPU, et cetera, are relatively uncommon at times, because their organizations get them and they want them in constant use. So what we're trying to do is provide them a platform that allows them to keep the GPU spinning, or keep the GPU moving all the time, with all the workloads that they have, regardless of what they're attempting to do. So from a delivery-based perspective, it is definitely one where the focus is to go through and give them that accelerated based inference, and the capability to have a platform that, now that the operations teams and the developers are utilizing it, they can adopt AI easier at scale.
Oh, and I think this is so important. And this is where I think people get hung up, is nobody in enterprise cares whether or not I can create a 10-second video from a set of text that I'm going to then go share with my friends. The world of Sora and some of these consumer-driven AI, it's not that dissimilar from the moment when we all had mobile phones, and look what I can do with my mobile phone. That we needed to take a little while to find the right place to use it for the enterprise. And to your point, it's that availability, reliability, security, stability, repeatability predictability that is so important in order to look at AI adoption inside of the enterprise. So I'm very excited about what Red Hat offers there. You touched on GPU as a service. Can I have you unpack that just a little bit for anybody who's listening who may not completely know what that means? I should say what that means inside of a on-premise environment or inside of a contained OpenShift environment versus I'm going to go out and buy it from CoreWeave or some other place like that that provides me GPU as a service in an easily identifiable way.
So things that we've gone through within our OpenShift environment is we've created dynamic slicing to be able to go through and interact directly with MIG. So basically going through and creating that control area so that you have interaction a better interaction in Kubernetes experience with the card itself. It's going through and bringing the workload via a queuing technology to where it's needed at the time that it's needed. Nobody wants to go through and take a rather expensive GPU and then provide it to a project who sits on it all night. So going through and running the services at their needing it in a queue-based methodology and then bringing and releasing that service, we're doing that via our implementation, we call the Red Hat build of queue. KUWE. So we're doing that specifically within the baseline OpenShift platform. And this really helps customers adopt things like model as a service so that they can have extensive base catalogs to be able to do those large scale deliveries. So from like inside a company itself, we want to enable the experimentation provided in an enterprise framework of a level of control so that they have the capability to have dynamic tracing where they want to be able to see it, all the pathways through the application itself, or provide those GPUs not just to containers, but to virtual machines, because there's still a lot of AI-based workloads today that are VM-based. So
Sure.
Going through and providing those customers options.
Great. As a matter of personal curiosity, what are the kind of common use cases you're seeing for AI where you guys have been engaged at this point?
I mean, we're seeing kind of a smattering of, chatbots, RAG implementations. One of the prevailing value of what we bring is on-prem, localization, private AI, keeping your IP safe from the models out there. And so that's what we're really seeing. Insurance companies, right? Insurance companies run claims, run pictures, run things through the models, and get a first swath of what does this look like? What does it potentially mean? And then it goes to a human for additional interpretation.
And we've been doing AI for a rather long time. We've got a large number of predictive AI customers doing things like machine-based vision. We've showcased some of these at KubeCon, or we're actually going through and running our technology on a drone. From organizations are adopting AI at rather different paces based on their verticals, and we're seeing some verticals that are rather heavily out in front.
Sure.
Really, our goal is to be able to help them align to a framework that meets the controls that they may be looking to go through and do, things like HIPAA or PCI or like the DISA STIGs, to be able to go through and have a comfortability on the underlying mechanics of the platform. This was a term coined by one of the leaders at Red Hat. We attempt to go through and provide stability to be the same on the underside of the platform so that everything can be changing above, and we're bringing that to AI.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's the other reason that I really love working with Red Hat is we have similar value props. That's what we do, is make sure that this stuff works so that this stuff can work. So you don't see the what's going on underneath, but you have to have it there and have it be secure and so on to be able to deliver what the value on the top of it.
Actually, to that point,
Yeah.
that actually gave me a little bit of heartache when we started getting into the traditional, like what we consider AI right now, because
Yeah.
I felt like as a company, I've been with the company for a number of years, like our bread and butter is the data center, right? And like we got into containerization, we got into these other pieces, and it took me a minute to like think back to how we really embraced containerization, how we embraced application, delivery, application management with JBoss, how we're now embracing AI. Our mindset and our mentality is the same every step of the way. We provide a stable technology. We enable the data center. We enable the hardware. What we're doing is we're enabling you to do your job better, faster, more efficient, stable. And I mean, and that was my aha moment of AI is just another kind of knock on this chain of like containerization, virtualization, application delivery, AI. Like we're kind of rinsing and repeating the same recipe. Like, all right, we work with hardware providers. We enable the hardware providers. We give you that consistent, stable platform to do the next thing that you want to do. And that it made sense for me.
Yeah, it's parallels within the operating system. You know, we've been interacting with hardware for years. The AI accelerators are just a new hardware to specifically interact with, going through and providing the best capability out of the hardware. And then applications are just becoming intelligent-based applications. And we've been doing application modernization for a very long time. So going through and introducing these new technologies, they're really extensions of what people have been doing with the mechanics of API for years. Just taking and adding in the things like agentic, where you're having applications talk to applications. And this is where it gets super exciting and all the capabilities you have, but can be scary and super expensive unless you go through it and know, because unlike days past where you would just go through, fine tune a model and blast out of these small language models and get what you want, these intelligent applications are constantly chitter chatting back with each other, and you're paying for those token counts. So going through and having control over that really allows you to do so much more.
Yeah, you've launched on one of my favorite areas of discussion. We could probably have another whole coffee talk on how models interacting is going to change the way that APIs are dealt with, and sort of the future of the internet as we move into an area where agents are talking to each other. But I'm going to stop us there because otherwise we're going to spend another 45 plus minutes on this. Before we go, thank you both. This has been a great conversation. I've learned a bunch. Before we go, if I can ask each of you to maybe, if you had to give one piece of advice to an IT leader who was looking to make a platform transformation or a platform transition, what would that one piece of advice be? And Matt, I'm going to start with you and let Matthew finish us out.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to what is the next year? What does 2-3 years look like? I mean, we can fix the pain now, but we're also trying to fix the pain for tomorrow. And that's really the core of the value prop that we have, and what makes sense to look at our products. So.
Matthew, thoughts?
And I would say that when I talk to technology leaders, it's like, when do I jump onto the AI train? And if I said, if you really, you should have started yesterday, because these experimentations really, they build a practice and an understanding of how to go through and really bring new potential to the applications that are out there. And you don't have to, there is no great outcome that is started with, I'm just going to throw everything away and start with something fresh. Going through and running experiments within your current bases and providing incremental value is really where we're helping customers create the largest ROI. So not trying to go through and take on something too large, but bringing it in at a pace that goes through and aligns to your current software delivery life cycles that provides real value.
I love that. So all creativity builds on previous work. That's a super great point to end us up on. So thank you both for joining me so much today, Kelly.